Imagine your Salesforce org as a secured library where only authorized users have access to specific records. Welcome everyone. In today's session, we are going to talk about controlling record level access in your Salesforce org. So without wasting any time further, let's proceed with the video. Now, when we are talking about controlling the record access, we can use the following for modifying the record access in our org. It can be org-wide defaults, role hierarchies, sharing rules, or manual sharing. Today, we are going to talk about all four of them. But before proceeding ahead, I want to share a tip over here. Always define the org-wide defaults first before configuring the other sharing mechanism. Now, org-wide defaults establishes the base level of access of records for a specific object in your Salesforce org. So basically it is used to define how records are shared among users and set the foundation for your security model. Now generally any user has the full access for all the records which the user has ownership of, but the user cannot see records of other users. So this org-wide defaults actually set the access level whether the users who don't have ownership on a record can see records of other users or not. So while defining the org-wide defaults, these are the three different accesses that we provide to most of the objects. Though there are some objects on which we can provide other access level as well, but these are the keywords. They are public read write. Now if I talk about public read write, the name itself suggests that it allows users to view and modify all records associated with the object. If we will talk about public read only, all users can view records, but only owners and users above them in the role hierarchy can edit them. So if a clerk is there and there are few managers above in the role hierarchy, those managers can definitely see and edit the records owned by the clerk. And if I talk about private, it is the most restricted access and only the record owner and users higher up in the role hierarchy can view and edit the records. This is the most restrictive settings. So to brief it up, public read write will give you complete read write access to all the users whether they have ownership or not. Public read only, so all the users can view the record, but only those which are higher in the hierarchy can edit it. And if it is private, only the record owner and the users higher in the hierarchy can edit it. Now this role hierarchy concept works by default with standard objects, but you can decide the role hierarchy concepts for custom object by your own. Now OWD setting, or in other words org-wide default settings, can be configured for both standard and custom object, and OWD settings are the starting point for data access in Salesforce. More granular access can then be granted through sharing rules, role hierarchies, profiles, and permission sets. So let's see how we are going to set the org-wide defaults in our org for different objects. So guys, here we are in our org, and now let's quickly go to the setup page. So I'm clicking on the gear icon, clicking on setup, and to set the org-wide defaults in the quick find, you should type sharing. Click on sharing settings, and here you can see different objects and the default internal and default external access for it. You can also see on the rightmost side it is showing grant access using hierarchies, which is already checked for all the standard objects. Basically the custom object over here at the bottom of it, and there you will be able to change the role hierarchies whether you want to enable it or not. If it is enabled, definitely the person higher in the hierarchy will definitely get the access. Now to change the org-wide defaults, you can click on edit. From here, choose what default internal access or what default external access do you want. You can change them, and once you are done, click on save. So I want to share a tip over here. Set the most restrictive access with the org-wide defaults and then gradually provide the access with other sharing mechanism. And please comment below with hashtag OWD account and tell me what will be the default org-wide default access that you will provide to the account object. Role hierarchy. Now, role hierarchies controls the visibility of records, right? So any user's position in the organization actually tells what are the different data or what are the different records this specific user can see and can edit. Definitely a user higher up in the hierarchy will have the access to read and edit of all the records of all the users below it. So users higher in the hierarchy access records owned by users below them. Here the key concept is it works on the top down data data access. Definitely higher level in the hierarchy inherit all the access rights. Not linked to profiles. Role hierarchies are not at all linked to profiles or permission sets. So while a profile determines what actions user can perform, role hierarchies control what data users can see. Customizable structure. Roles can be customized to mirror your company's organization structure, allowing for a tailored approach to data sharing. And what is the impact of data sharing? It broadened the access. Definitely, role hierarchies expand data visibility beyond what is allowed by OWD, enabling broader access for users in the supervisory role, and it control over record ownership as well. So the hierarchy ensures that those at the top have access to all records owned by those beneath them, making it easier to manage data at higher organization levels. So before proceeding ahead, let me show you how you can set the role hierarchies in your org, how you can define different roles in your org, and also if there is any custom object, how you can enable or disable the role hierarchy for it. So let's move to the org. So in your org, come to the setup page and here type role, click on roles, just click on setup roles, and here you can see the different roles that are there in your org. By default, Salesforce provides a default role and you can certainly enhance it. Now it is not required that the role or the role hierarchy defined over here exactly mirror your organization structure, but it is highly recommended to follow the same. Because if the role hierarchy is exact mirror of the organization structure, then it would be easier for you to share the records to the person higher in the hierarchy. Now here you can see there are different roles. You can define your own roles, or you can even edit the existing role over here, and you can click on the assign button to assign it to someone else. So suppose if I want to assign this role to someone, I can click on assign, and then I can choose the users to whom I want to assign this role. Let's go back. Now I'm not going to assign anything right now. Instead of that, I'm going to define a new role. So suppose if I want a new role just below the CFO, let's suppose CTO. So I will click on this add role just below the CFO. So you can see this role, the current role that we are defining is reporting to CFO. I'm giving it a name as CTO, let's suppose, and just click on save. Now if you will go back to the roles page, and here if you see CFO is having CTO beneath it. So any user who is having CTO role and all the records owned by the CTO will definitely be accessible by the CFO or the CEO. Now I want to share a tip over here. Always define the role hierarchy in your org to reflect the data sharing structure of your real organization. Don't forget to comment below with hashtag role and mentioning the role which is at the highest level in your real organization. Sharing rules. Now sharing rules are used to extend access to records beyond what is defined by OWD or what is defined by role hierarchy. So with the OWD, definitely you are providing the access of the records to the users who don't own them. The same applies to role hierarchies. But if you want to extend this access beyond the role hierarchy, because in the role hierarchy you are sharing the access vertically. But suppose if there are two different persons at the same level of role, and if you want to share the access of the records with them, definitely role hierarchy will not work over here, and sharing rule is here to save our life. Now they are essential for scenarios where users need access to records that they don't own or do not fall under the role hierarchy. There are different types of sharing rules. You can create a sharing rule by owner-based sharing rule or criteria-based sharing rule. If you are using owner-based sharing rule, then the records are shared according to the ownership, and if you are sharing according to the criteria, then you can specify some field and some value for the record, and if a record matches that criteria, then that record will be shared to other users. Now these can be applied to public groups and roles. You can give read-only or read-write access. So definitely public groups, roles and territories can be involved if we are dealing with owner-based sharing, or if we are sharing it to other public groups or roles. And while sharing it, we can provide read-only access or read-write access. Now it overrides the OWD. So whatsoever is defined by the OWD will be overridden by the sharing rules, and it facilitates collaboration by allowing cross-departmental or cross-functional teams to access shared records. Suppose there is a specific product or services being sold by your sales team, and now the service team needs to work work on the same record or needs to at least read the same record to get some access, definitely sharing rule will be helpful in those situations. So let's see how we are going to define these two types of sharing rules in our org. So from the setup page, click on the quick find and type in here sharing. Click on sharing settings, scroll down, and when all the OWD default settings are over, it will provide you sharing rules option. Now from here you can create sharing rules for different objects. Now let's suppose I want to create a sharing rule for lead. I will click on new. Here I will provide a name for my sharing rule. I'm just mentioning it as lead sharing sample. You can provide a description to specify for what purpose you have defined the sharing rule. Just below that you have the two options or the two rule types, which is based on record owner or based on criteria. If you select based on record owner, then you have to select the owner actually. Now this owner can be a public group, can be a role, or it can be roles and subordinates. So if I'm selecting a public group, it will ask me to choose any specific public group. By default, I haven't created any public group, so it is showing me the default all internal users public group. If I select roles, it will show me all the roles. Let's suppose I'm selecting Eastern sales team, and now I want to share it with Western sales team. So I will select roles again, and here I will select Western sales team. So here you go. So what I have specified here is this sharing rule is based on ownership of the record. All the records which are owned by the roles of Eastern sales team will be shared to all the person who belong to the Western sales team role. Below that you can decide whether you want to give read only or read write access. So right now I'm giving read only and I'm clicking on save. Click on OK and you are done. If you will scroll down, you can clearly see a sharing rule under the lead sharing rules option. Similarly, if I want to define a sharing rule on account, I will click on new, provide a sharing rule name over here as account sharing sample. This time I'm selecting based on criteria, and then I can access all those fields available in the lead. So I'm selecting active equals true. So after selecting equals, I will click on this lookup and here I will select yes. Click on insert selected. So according to this criteria, the records will be shared. So all the records, or I should say all the account records, because we are creating an account, all the account records which are active will be shared. Now to whom you want to share it? Suppose I want to share it to roles. So I will select roles over here and let's say SVP human resource. So all the accounts which are active right now will be shared with the SVP human resource role. Now here you have three access. Basically, whenever you will create a sharing rule on master object or an object which is parent, then you will also have the option to select the accessibility level for all the child. As I am doing it for account, it is giving me first option for account and contract, second is for opportunity, and third is for case access. And I can provide different level of accessibility over there. Suppose I want read only for all of them. So the SVP human resource will not only have the accessibility to accounts, it will also have the accessibility to related opportunities and cases of that specific account. Once you are done, click on save, click on OK, and it's done. Don't forget to share in the comment with hashtag role and specify whether you are going to prefer owner based sharing or you are going to prefer criteria based sharing. Manual sharing. Now it allows record owners or users with full access to share specific records with other users or groups on an as needed basis. So whether you want to share specific record, in those situations you can use manual sharing option. So manual sharing is performed on individual records and making it ideal for situation where a one-off sharing arrangement is required. So when you want to share individual records, then manual sharing is the key. It allows the owner or users with full access to grant read only or read write access to others. It is available on all objects where the org-wide defaults are set to anything more than public read write. So if org-wide default by default is public read write, that means you are by default providing public read write access to all the users. So in that situation you won't find the manual sharing option. But if the OWD is restricted, whether it is public read or maybe private, in those situations definitely manual sharing is helpful. And the same applies to sharing rules as well, and that is very common thing, right? If the org-wide default itself is public read write, then you don't need to provide other sharing options. Other sharing options are only provided in the situation where the org-wide default is restricted than public read write. It is useful to provide temporary access, so it grants temporary access to records for users outside of the normal sharing rule or role hierarchy, such as when collaborating on a specific task or project. It is also helpful in delegating responsibility, so you can share records with team members who need to take over specific tasks or provide additional support. So there is a sharing sharing button available, so you can use sharing button. Users can manually share a record by clicking on that sharing button on the record page. And manual shares are visible in the record sharing settings, ensuring transparency over who has access. So let's quickly see in the org how we are going to use manual share. Now to use manual sharing, as I told you, first of all you need to make sure that that specific record or that specific object is having restricted access than public read write. So I'm first of all clicking on edit and making sure that the account object is more than public read write. So right now you can see account is having public read write. So definitely I cannot share it. So what I will do is I will make it public read only and I will save it. Click on OK. So I'm refreshing it and it's done. And now you can clearly see the account and contract are public read only. Now I'm going to the account object. So I'm refreshing my application section, not the setup, and going to accounts, clicking on a specific account, and from the button menu I will have the access of share. So you can click on this sharing button and then it will ask you to whom you want to share this specific record. That means if I will share it, the Burlington Textiles Corp of America, this specific record can be shared to other users. Now you can select other user, other public group, other role, and other roles and subordinates. So clearly it is also very useful when you want to share a record to one specific user and not the whole role or the public group. Here also you can decide whether you want to provide read only or read write access, and all the child records are also available over here. Once you provided it, you can click on save. So I'm directly sharing it to a specific user. Let me find some. I hope there is a user over here. Let me try to find. Yes, there is a Sparshing user. I'm selecting him and I'm making it read only for all of them, and then I'm clicking on save. Now currently it is not allowing me to do. Now this is a very good situation to understand the scenario. My current user to whom I was sharing is not having access to this specific object. So make sure that user should be having the access to that specific object or should be having the base level of user license to access that specific record. If that is not the scenario, then you won't be able to share it. Okay, let me share it to a specific role or something, and let me share it to, let's suppose, a specific role. Let me choose CTO and let me click on save. So it is saved now. And now I want to share a tip over here. Encourage your users to use manual sharing responsibly to avoid unnecessary data exposure. Now that marks the end of this video. See you soon in the next video. Till then, thank you and take care.